Welcome to the Jericho Force podcast, where we learn how to integrate faith into the work that we do. Don't conform to the world's way of doing business. Transform by doing business God's way. Here's our host, my husband, author, speaker, teacher, encourager, and stewardship coach, Jason Davis.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Jason Davis, and welcome to the Jericho Force podcast, where we learn how to integrate faith into the work that we do. I am so excited. We've got an action-packed show today. We've got a very, very special guest. She and I were chatting throughout the week, so I'm telling you, you're going to listen. You're going to want to listen to what she has to say. Tonight's guest, her name is Kylie Ota. Kylie helps high-achieving female coaches and consultants go from overwhelmed to overflowing by upgrading their current business model into one that runs like a well-oiled machine. As a former behavioral science specialist and the Hawaii Army National Guard, Kylie has spent nearly 2 decades managing multi-million-dollar projects for a Fortune 50 giant in the energy industry. Kylie has adapted her work in the behavioral science and project management, fast-paced world of oil and gas manufacturing to create a unique transformational coaching program for high-achieving women. Kylie now resides in Los Angeles with her husband and continues to pray over her adult children that have left the nest. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Kylie Ota to the show. Kylie, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing awesome. Oh, I'm so excited to be here tonight. Yes, after our conversations this week, I'm like, whew, it's going to go down tonight.
Absolutely. So, Kylie, with that being said, let's get right into it. There was a lot there in your bio, so I feel like we need to pick up with your professional background. I mean, you have such unique experiences. I mean, goodness, you've got the energy sector, you've got the military, which thank you for your service, by the way. So tell us, how did it all begin? I mean, you tell us the story. How do we even unpack all of that? Let's get into it.
Well, I'll be honest, I didn't want to join the military. It wasn't a dream of mine. But you know how God works, right? I didn't get any money to go to college. And I was an honor student, was graduating with an honors diploma, a 3.6 GPA. And I didn't apply for scholarships because the school that I was with, it's a special private school for people of Hawaiian ancestry. And I was on a full ride scholarship there. And they have like the largest trust in the state of Hawaii. And I was like, well, they're funding my education here. Surely they'll fund my education, at a higher institution.
Sure.
But what happened was, I filled out my FAFSA and my grandfather died that year. And so we inherited assets, right? So like, look at your tax return, my parents' tax return, and they had assets all of a sudden. But at the time, my parents are divorced. So I had 4 parents. And out of my 4 parents, only 2 were working, and one was at, I'm gonna say like kind of minimum wage. It was like $11 an hour. So we were in dire straits, and I said, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I ended up singing at one of my friend's graduation parties. Her dad was a battalion commander for the Hawaii Army National Guard, and he's like, hey, where are you going to school? Because he knew, right, I was pretty smart. I was, had all of that stuff going for me. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going anywhere. I can't afford to go to college. And he's like, what? Smart girl like you not going to college. Okay. So he offered me an opportunity to work in the Hawaii Army National Guard. I had no idea that the National Guard was actually part of the Army. I'll just be straight.
I think a lot of people
What's
don't
the
know
National
that,
Guard? But he hooked me up with a recruiter that ended up being my mom's neighbor. And they happened to have a vacancy in behavioral science, which was what was going to be my major in college. I was going to major in psychology. And I ended up going into the military at age 17. And I got my start there. And then, I know this is kind of a long story, but I'll try to keep it short as possible. I met a boy. We got pregnant, got married, and I didn't end up even using my GI Bill. That marriage didn't last. I ended up coming home to Hawaii because I was with him at his duty station. And then I ended up coming home to Hawaii after the marriage didn't work out. And that's how I ended up in oil and gas, because I was a single mom, and I didn't even know what I was getting into at that point either. It's like, what is oil and gas? I don't even know what I'm going to be doing there. I started off as an operator in the manufacturing side, so pretty much wearing a hard hat, tool belt, coveralls, or that jumper, right? Safety shoes, making gasoline products. Yeah. And so I was just like, okay, this is where I ended up. And for the life of me, I was like, just on, I'm just like, I'm along for the ride. I'm like, someday, these opportunities are going to shift. Like, I'm not going to be a single mom anymore. Like, God, something's going to happen. Something's going to shift. And then I met my second husband there at the refinery. And long story short, he ended up becoming a narcissistic abuser, or he was. It was revealed to me after a short while that he was a narcissistic abuser. I didn't know at the time, but I didn't know the term at the time, but things started happening. And that marriage ended as well. And I became a single parent again, having to start over. And I was like, God, what's going to happen to me? And I kind of shut everything down at that point. I mean, I started off with my own business as in multi-level marketing in like 2003. At that point, my daughter was like 2 years old, and I didn't want to go back to going back to oil and gas after my maternity leave. I'm like, oh, this really sucks, because we work long 12-hour shifts. I come home, I'm covered with chemical, covered with petroleum product. I'm like, I don't want to bring this home to my kids. I don't like the long hours. I don't like working nights and weekends. And so something needs to shift. I tried my hand at a couple of different, multi-level marketing businesses, only to, I don't know if this is like technically legal, but to offset my 6-figure income. Like, oh yeah, like you can make money. I'm like, I don't need to make money. Right at that point, I'm like, I don't need to do this business to make money, because I already have enough, And they're like, oh, but you can keep more of your money if you set up a business. I was like, oh, I'm here now. Like, let me keep some of that money.
And ladies and gentlemen, real quick, we are not giving tax advice.
We are not. We are not. And so, right. And naive as I was back then, I didn't know anything, but I was like, sure, let me give it a try. I like the product. And that's how I started off in business, and like getting to learn more about business, and then, financial strategies. At this point, I was a 2-time divorcee. Like, I needed to get a real handle on my money. Actually, I had a pretty good grasp of money. My second husband, right, the abuser, he had some good sense, and he taught me a lot about finances. And working in the oil and gas industry, I started off there when I was 20 years old, and there were all of these older men that I was working with that, they would open their portfolios every morning, check the stock prices, and like, oh, it was kind of like, this is my, like, again, disclaimer, but it was a form of legalized gambling in my eyes, because they would check the stocks every morning, like, oh, got money, didn't make money, and everyone was on track to retire with $1 million plus. And the company that I was with also had an annuity plan, because it's such a long-term, energy company. been around since the 1900s. So, right, they had an annuity plan in place. So I was like, yeah. People were gearing up to retire at $1 million plus, and they're like, you started so young at age 20. I calculated it. I'm like, okay, I have to eat this for X amount of years. I can retire at age 55. And like, I was learning about portfolios and such. I got a financial planner eventually, and I was like, okay, I'm set, right? If not anything else, like I don't like this job, I don't like being here. If not anything else, at least I'm set up for success so that I can retire at age 55 and then start living my life, start doing what I want to do, or what God called me to do. And that was just what I thought I was going to do. And then I had a physical challenge. I ended up getting adrenal burnout. And it's not one of those things like, oh, yeah, you're burnt out. I'm like, no, I had actual medically diagnosed, like lab results and everything, tested for a low cortisol, which put me in the adrenal burnout stage 4 category. So my body was not making any of the essential hormones at all. And my doctor said, either you change your lifestyle, quit your job within the next year, or I can't help you at this point. I was like, what?
Wow. My goodness, Kylie. There's like two overarching themes I can see with your background. That's perseverance and overcoming adversity. No matter what life threw at you, you just perpetually kept getting back up, kept getting back up. What influence? Because, Kylie, we're talking about Christian business owners, kingdom entrepreneurs here. So what would you say to those people who have setback after setback, and kind of talk about how the personal affects the professional and the professional impacts the personal? Because I feel like, Kylie, at times people compartmentalize, but we can clearly see in your story that they both affect each other. There is no compartmentalization. So what would you say? What advice would you give to people in that area?
Yeah. All right. So not only was I working 70 plus hours a week, I was also pretty active at my church. I was a church leader. I was teaching, Sunday school. And even Sunday school, we had to come up with our own curriculum. They gave us like the standard curriculum, but I was teaching 4th to 6th graders, and that's that age, right? Their nose is in their device. They don't really want to be there. They're just there, So I made it a point to like jazz it up, and just being part of a church community, being plugged in, was really beneficial and really helpful. And well, I'll just be honest, like for those of you who don't know, I am writing a book called the 30 Shades of Scarlet, which is a story about my trials with abuse and adultery, and how I got sucked down that rabbit hole. And I think it's part of being that high performer. I wasn't getting any wins. I wasn't getting any wins in my real life. And so, met a guy, and, he told me all of things that I wasn't hearing about myself. I didn't hear from my parents. I didn't hear from work, because I'll just be honest, right? The oil industry is 2% female, if we're lucky. I was one female in a bunch of like 200 men. And it locker room talk, right? Because this is field operations, right? So a lot of locker room talk, a lot of,
can only imagine.
Yeah, and it was a lot to try and just like maintain and keep that up. And right, my ex-husband also worked in that industry, so we had a lot of same friends, and like he had family members that were also working there, and it was just really hard to really have people believe that like this other life at home was happening. Like my husband is like, because if you're not familiar with the way that narcissists work, is everyone thinks they're the greatest person if they are not the one being abused, right? Everybody thought he was the greatest guy. So at work, I had to deal with that. Like, oh yeah, your husband's so great. I'm like, yeah. And then at home, had to deal with, the negative down talk and all of that. And so when you're talking about compartmentalization, I actually did have to compartmentalize a lot. And I realized that when I was writing my book, there was a lot of disassociative episodes, because I'll tell you, it was a hard book to write, right? Nobody wants to write about their dirty laundry and like feeling super exposed. And I realized as I was going through the book writing process, shout out to Beyond the Book Media, but for the coaches there that helped me write the book, because I realized I did disassociate at certain times in my life, because I had to fake the funk when I was going to work with all of these men, because you don't cry in the locker room, right? Like, men don't cry. And like, if you come to work crying as a female, right, they're like, oh, she's weak, she's a female, of course she's going to cry about it. And I'm like, I'm not crying about what's happening here. I'm crying about, what's, like, I was already at my edge, I was at the edge. And like, something that they said may have like tipped me over the edge, and I just felt like crying. And for me, my gut reaction is, when I'm angry, I cry. And so that doesn't help in a male-dominated industry. Like how men show anger is very different than how females show anger. So me crying was just a sign of weakness. Anyhow, so for me, I did have to compartmentalize a lot. And so why I'm bringing up all of that, right? I was in church and I was doing what I thought were all the right things. Yes, my church sisters helped me, and, like being connected and stuff did help me. But I'll be honest, I was still a mess on the inside. I was still searching for love and acceptance. And when that guy popped up in my life, I was like, wow, this is something. Like, I was so starved at that point. It's kind of like when you see homeless people like digging through the trash can, and they're eating out of a trash can because they're so hungry. That's kind of like how I felt at that time. Even though I was, I would say, let's say like the homeless person sits outside a 7-Eleven, right? There's a whole bunch of food sitting right inside the 7-Eleven, but he didn't have access to it. Not to say that I didn't have access to God's love, right? We all know now that God's love is abundant, God's love is here for us. But at the time, my mindset was so like authoritarian. My parents were very authoritarian growing up, seen and not heard. You have to earn everything that you get. I felt like I had to earn my way into that 7-Eleven to grab like the fresh food, the fresh manna from God, because I didn't deserve to be inside. So I sat outside, and I would rather dig through the trash than go inside and get fresh food. You know what I'm saying? Wow. That's just where I was at that point. And when I was in that downtrodden state, I actually attempted suicide twice. And it wasn't because I didn't want to I wanted to die. I didn't want to live with my ex-husband anymore, because we tried to get divorced, but I was like, I work with him, we have children together. Like, I knew he was always going to be a part of my life, and I said, well, I rationalized in my brain that if I were to die, then like that's final. So, right. Yeah. The whole checklist. I'm like, well, and my brain was rationalizing this, right? If I were to die, that would be the ultimate end, right? I never have to see him anymore. Like, when you're just trying to think of like, okay, right? I know that you're a technical brained person. I'm a technical brained person, right? Like looking at the odds and like looking at the different scenarios, and and my brain logically jumped to that conclusion. And so, you know, I took some pills with like this old bottle of wine that I had when we had left over in the fridge, like from some party like a while back. Like, I'll just say I'm very frugal, so I'm like, if it ain't waste, don't throw it away. It was still there, you know.
Yeah.
And I took it, and when I felt myself going down, like what brought me back up was God showed me a vision of my son. And at this point, right, my son's from my first marriage, my daughter's from my second marriage with this narcissistic abuser, and I didn't have any contact with that guy because we met in the military. It was a really short marriage. You know, I didn't really know where he was. He kind of disappeared off the radar, so he wouldn't have to pay child support. And so, like, my son is going to be a full-blown orphan if I were to die. Because at this point, my parents were helping me take care of him, and like I had aunts and uncles that were helping me out. So I was like, yeah, he'll be fine. But then I was like, wait, logical brain kicking in again. If he might become a ward of the state, and then my parents, like, no, like he's just gonna become, you know, like he's gonna get lost in the system. And I was like, wait, I cannot be that selfish to lose one kid because of this man, you know, that I was trying to get away from. So I sucked it up, and I just stopped taking the pills. I ended up, thank God, I just went into really deep sleep. I slept for like almost a whole day just to sleep it all off. And I finally came to, look, my friend came and like picked me up, and like she nursed me back to life. So this, like, one of my friends from multi-level marketing, like I didn't even have real friends anymore because my husband had cut me off.
Wow.
So she came and she picked me up, and we had this really long talk, and I said, yeah, you know what? He's not worth it. And so at that point, I decided to get better for me and for my children, because I said, I will never neglect my children like this again. I will never put, you know, another person above my children and what have you. I don't know, we're supposed to be talking about business. I promise.
No, Kylie, this all adds up, because you were in a big part of what I kept hearing. And I think one reason that we do compartmentalize, like we should be able to show up with our full authentic selves, but the environment that people are in, so whether it's corporate or whether you're self-employed, the environment that you're in matters, because environment can foster different types of behaviors, different types of habits, and especially culture. There's so many different kinds of company culture out there. There's industry culture. Then you talked about just some of the differences in how men and women process emotions, not just naturally, but in the workplace. So environment was a big thing I kept hearing from you. And then in the healing process, I appreciate your transparency and vulnerability, because people need to hear that. Kylie, I feel like you're helping so many business owners because they are afraid to share stories like this. I mean, you're talking about narcissism, adultery, these are some really, really hard things that God has brought you through that other people, they haven't yet had the freedom to share. So I feel like, even though it's not business per se in this particular segment in your story, it's going to help so many people. It's a powerful testimony. And then you received, like God always does, a wake-up call. Now, he can do what he wants. Your wake-up call might look different from someone else's, but with the one that he gave you, my goodness, reminding you of your family, of your son. And so God, and then he used a relationship from multi-level marketing, which, Kylie, you made me think about something a mentor told me, and that's relational currency. And when you establish relational currency in the marketplace, you never know what relationship will be beneficial at a given time. So here you were personally really going through the ringer. And then it was not friends and not that family didn't or anything like that, but it was really a professional relationship that helped get you back on your feet. And then I love, in the wake up call, the realization, you said, you know what, I had to decide. Like when you came to yourself, nobody was going to do anything for you. Of course, God is on your side. And so we're able to love because he first loved us first. And, we can't love our neighbor unless we love ourselves. So you felt the love of God, and then God used people, and then you made a decision. So Kylie, you are really helping everybody unpack. I don't want you to feel like it wasn't. Now, Kylie, you said something earlier talking about adrenal burnout. But
Right.
as we were talking throughout the week, what did that lead to professionally? Like you learned some things from adrenal burnout. You learned some things about, especially being a high achiever, you learned some things about contentment and discontentment. Can you unpack that and kind of give us a bridge of where that took you and to where you are now and the kind of help that you provide in your business as a service?
Right. So right, I tried a whole bunch of things to get out of that shift working environment. And one of the things that I tried was health coaching. I mean, I got a year-long certification program, and the only reason why I went into that program was because, one of their selling points was an adrenal protocol that I could offer to my clients. And I knew that God wanted me to work specifically with women who are dealing with burnout because after I was diagnosed, I was looking around at everyone at work, right? Granted, they're all men. God led me to work with women, but the culture and the environment of that workplace was, work hard. Like you work hard, you work as much overtime as you can. Like it was just that hustle environment. And if you say no to overtime, you're weak. When I was diagnosed with the adrenal burnout and my doctor wanted me to quit my job, I was like, you're crazy. But what I can do is maybe go out on medical leave. And so I did that. And while I was out on medical leave, I heard about the smack talk behind my back because I had a few friends that were still, there. And one of them is my current husband. So this is my third marriage. It's going wonderful. We've been married for 8 years, but he was behind at work and he would hear people talking smack like, oh, she's just faking it because she looked fine. And that's the thing that I want people to get is like, you may look fine, you may feel fine, but really the numbers don't lie. When you check your hormones and you check all of those imbalances, the numbers don't lie. After sleeping only 4 to 5 hours every night for about 19 years, that will take its toll on your body. And that's what I had been doing, plus all of the additional like emotional, mental trauma that I had been going through my personal life. And then there's a professional side as well, that led to the adrenal burnout. And there's a real stigma against, it wasn't even a real disease until I think maybe 2 to 3 years ago.
Wow.
Like even when I started working with it, it was still kind of like when I got diagnosed, it was kind of like this fictional diagnosis. It didn't even have anything in the medical coding and billing. I forget what it's like, the DC-10, I think it's called, but they didn't even have a code for it in the system when I got diagnosed. Luckily, I saw, a naturopathic person that God led me to through my church leader, because I just needed more energy. I was like, I can't function. I have brain fog and all of that stuff. And that's why I got tested. I got diagnosed, and then I got further tested once I was like, I'm still feeling bad. And that's when I got the adrenal diagnosis. Anyhow, where was I going with that story? The burnout, and there's this whole stigma about it. And when I became a health coach, like that's what I wanted to do for people. And I was actually, so I don't recommend this, but I was double dipping. I was still working at a corporate job. I had recovered, got off medical leave, went back to work, and I was talking to like a mutual friend of ours, right, Susan. She was like, not a lot of people actually recover and go back to work. Like most people end up just quitting their jobs and like staying off the job and kind of going on medical disability for it. But I didn't. I ended up going back to work. And she's like, that's a recovery story. You should celebrate. So I actually left the job eventually because those words kept ringing in my ear. Like, if you don't change your lifestyle, you are going to like, you'll never like heal. It'll come back. And when so this is a funny story. At the time, we were in the refinery industry. It's called a turnaround. It's when the plant shuts down and we clean up everything. We do repairs that we can't do on a run. And so we were in a turnaround season, and those seasons I was working 100+ hours a week.
Wow.
And so when my doctor was like gradually giving more hours, he would clear me to work more hours. They were like, can you get more? Can you get more? And that was the point where I was like, I'm done with this. They keep pushing me to work more. And they wanted me to work, I think I finally capped it at like 50 hours. And they wanted me to push to 60. They wanted me to push to 60. And I was like, this is crazy. My doctor was right. And so I made that plan. I did the health coaching thing, and I made that plan to leave. But I actually left corporate because, so this is where the faith and business part comes in. I was watching a live stream by a prophetess named Tiffany Montgomery, and I was contemplating, okay, God, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay? Am I going to leave? Like, I know you're telling me to leave. Like, all the signs are telling me to leave, but how am I going to leave the 6-figure income? Like make it make sense. And I was watching the live stream, and she said, woman of God, if God told you to get off your job, you better go. And it's exactly what she said, like, because it rings in my brain every time I remember deciding to quit my job. And I was like, and I turned around in my chair. Like, mind you, I was on the dining room table. My back was against the wall, so there's nobody behind me. But it felt like, who are you talking to? Are you talking to me?
Right. Smile, you're on camera.
Right. And I was like, okay. And I said, God, if this is you, you're going to make it happen. 2 weeks later, I got approached by a marketing agency who I had ties with at the time. They were actually helping me with my business. They offered me a project manager position inside of their company. And I was like, yay, this is it. This is the answer. And then I talked to my husband, and he's like, do you know that you're taking a 75% pay cut? I was like, what? Because I'm like, oh, I was like, oh, this is a lot for, income from my business, because I had never made that much income before. It's like, it's a 75% pay cut from your regular income.
Ooh.
And I'm like,
it's a big haircut.
But I already said yes. I didn't sign any contracts or anything at that point, but I gave my word. So we're in the process of, they had to just draw it up and then give it to me to sign. And I was like, I didn't feel an integrity to back out. And so I ended up going there. And so now, that is like my regular stream of income is project management services for business owners. And I learned a lot at that company. So now looking back, I consider it a paid internship position.
Right. Gotcha.
Because I learned a lot. Like, that company, I think they're at 8 figures now. And if I said some of the names that they did marketing for, you would probably know who they were. But there's all these NDAs and stuff, so we can't really discuss. But that's how I learned about marketing and sales and like how to run an online business, because I got plopped into this 7-figure, now 8-figure business. And when I say plopped in, I actually worked out of their home. Wow. So I saw the ins and outs. Like, like the day-to-day, like everything, I saw everything. And I was like, wow, okay. So, and you know what? I'm just going to be honest, like I don't know about all 7-figure earners, but seeing the behind the scenes of this business and like other businesses that they were partnered with, every business struggles with the same stuff, whether you're 4-figure, 8-figure, there's always like operational issues, marketing changes, pivots, when you're in marketing and when you're marketing yourself, right? Especially with social media these days, everything is changing like night to day sometimes, And so I learned a lot about that. And what I learned from that was the same like red tape and things I was dealing with in corporate, right? When you work for a global company like I did, there's a lot of stuff, like a lot of red tape, a lot of hoops you have to go through, a lot of protocols and things like checking the boxes and stuff. Same thing in a large scale business, privately owned business, right? And so if you're a solopreneur listening to this and you think like, oh, I'm just going to hire a team, there are growth struggles at every stage of business right now. So this is the concept that God downloaded to me called the time management principle.
Yes, I'm so glad you went there. I was like, please, Kylie, please tell them about that. All that project management experience, all that operation experience, and folks, it's culminated to this moment. So you're going to want to listen as she breaks this down.
So, right, the time management principle God downloaded to me. And if you're following along, you have a piece of paper and pen, draw a circle, and then you cut that circle into 4 pieces. And then you're going to label your quadrants, TIME, remember clockwise. And you're going to see T and M are on opposite sides of the wheel. And T stands for time, M stands for money. And in any project, right, I've managed like a lot of projects in my years. It's always on time and on budget, right? Like, are we going to meet the deadline and are we going to exceed our cost? And it's always directly proportionate. When you want to scale faster, you got to throw more money at it. That's just the thing. You got to hire more staff. You got to get the apps or the software that you need in order to scale your business, right? If you're on MailChimp, you want to scale, you might have to get yourself some Infusionsoft, just saying, so that you can segment your email list and things like that. And as you grow and you can invest more, then you can get more of your time back because, right, you're not sending emails like one-off through MailChimp anymore. You can actually have a system that works like Infusionsoft, and it's, it does everything for you. And then there's the I and the E now on the other sides of the wheel. And so I stands for ideas and E stands for energy. When we have a lot of ideas, right, we have to make sure we have the energy to execute. And like I said, like at this point, I've worked with a couple of, 6-figure entrepreneurs, like, 6-7-figure entrepreneurs doing project management work. And these guys, I'm telling you, they have a lot of ideas, right? Especially if you're in the kingdom business, there's a lot of downloads that happen. And like, woo, inspired. And like, the CEO or whatever, you're the CEO, if you are the CEO, right? You're the business owner, you get a lot of ideas. And especially have an open channel to heaven, you're like, woo, all of these ideas. But then when you go to execute, it gets discouraging because you're like, wow, God, so many ideas. And how do I actually execute on those ideas? And then, so anyway, that's what God showed me. So the time and the money that's your efficiency model, right? It's how efficient are you, time versus money, and the ideas and the energy to execute. That is your effectiveness. That's the effectiveness of your business. Like, how effectively are you actually implementing those ideas that you get? Because right, not all ideas are for now. Right, this time wheel I got about 4 years ago, and only now I'm really starting to explore and expound upon it, because I'm like, God, I don't know what this has anything to do with where I was at the time I was doing health coaching, right? So I'm like, I don't know what I want to do with this. But God has a time and a season for everything. And so yeah, anyway, that's the whole time management principle. And within those quadrants, there are other pieces. And so if you want the whole thing, you can go to timemanagementprinciple.com and you can download the guide. It's like a mini ebook, and then there's the assessment wheel with the little subcategories inside of the big categories: the time, ideas, money, and energy. But basically, when you are doing this assessment, it will really show you what your values are, what your priorities are, right? If you score, so it's a wheel. If you are in the coaching space, it is actually based on the wheel of life.
Okay.
But God showed me how to reorganize those categories into these 12 quadrants. Woo! So that's the, when God speaks, we have to listen, because I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, God. But then as he's like, no, just listen, like, listen, Linda. Right. Sometimes he talks to me like that. Like,
he has a wonderful way. He has a wonderful way of showing it. I'm so glad you gave the URL, Kylie, because I was writing stuff down. I was like, they're going to need a place to come back to. So say that website again, Kylie, where they can find that.
It's called timemanagementprinciple.com. And I called it the time management principle because it's all about managing your resources. If you look at all the categories, these are your resources, right? Whether it's physical, emotional, mental. Wait, what is physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual?
Yes.
Right. And so I actually score myself. I'm not as diligent as I was before, but when I was really struggling with burnout, having high days and low days, I would score myself on my energy levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And I would give myself a score between 1 and 5 in my planner. I would do a wheel with a quadrant, and I would put numbers in those categories. Because when you look at your energy levels as you're going through your day, like if something physical happens to you or whatever, or if something mental happens to you, you have a mental drain, your physical energy gets depleted as well. And then you can start to see the correlation of like what's happening in your life. Like, I totally discounted my emotional trauma as a cause for my burnout, actually, until this broadcast right now.
Right.
So there's all these factors. Yeah.
Right. Well, Kylie, as we get ready to wrap up, and that, goodness, there'd probably be a whole other show we could do just on that one. But as we get ready to wrap up, what are some things you've got upcoming, and then what is the best way for people to reach out to you and connect with you as we get ready to close out?
Yeah, some of the things I have coming, right? My book launch is going to be coming out sometime in the late fall, I hope.
Yes.
It's in the publishing process right now. So Jason, I know you're so familiar with that process. Should be coming out sometime in the fall. And then I'm also going to be launching a operations-based program in like mid-September. And, I just realized it's actually launching the same week that we're going to be at the KBN conference. But I prayed to God. I looked at my big giant wall calendar and I said, when am I launching?
Right.
And it just happened to fall on those days. And anyhow, like, I didn't even realize that those were the dates. But it's an operations program for people who, because what God showed me, there's a lot of downloads that are happening, right? So if you're looking at the quadrant, the ideas are just coming in, right? We're in the end times. The ideas and the dreams and the visions are pouring down right now. And what God showed me is a lot of people don't know how to make those visions come to fruition.
Yes.
And
take what he's given you and then execute and be obedient.
Exactly. And the people get stuck. And he gave me another term, the churn and burn.
Churn and burn.
But yeah, and so what this course is going to do for people, right? It's super fresh. Like, it just was downloaded to me today in prophetic planning. So be patient, y'all. Just if you want to get on my email list, you can go to kylieota.com, and then I'll be in touch when these things are launching. But it's really for people who are getting all of these ideas. And I'll just be honest, people think that they need marketing. It's like, I need a social media thing, I need a this thing, I need an email marketing strategy, I need all the things. And then it's all cool to have those marketing strategies, but if you don't know how to implement them, if you don't know what product to use, software to use, apps to use that will actually help you, and it's not going to actually impede on your progress, meaning there are some people who I just say are technically challenged. Like, Infusionsoft is not for you. But I played in so many different people's businesses. I played in so many different pieces of software that I have the ability to actually help you figure out what operation strategy is right for who you are as a person, based on your personality and your likes and your dislikes. And so anyway, it's going to be a 10-week program starting in mid-September. And if you're stuck, if God's giving you a lot of ideas and you don't know how to execute, hit me up, kylieota.com or Kylie Ota on Instagram, send me a DM. And like, we can talk about it, because like, God just telling me, like, I have a lot to give. Sometimes we're trying to be humble, but like, he's like, I did not put you in these positions. I didn't put you in the refinery and learning about project management, managing these multi-million-dollar projects for you to sit on it, like have it be a job that you hate and like a part of your life that you just like, you think you wasted the last 20 years of your life. It's like, no, I was preparing you for this. I was like, oh, So anyway, yeah, it's really about teaching people how to really do launch operations. And it's very different from marketing strategy when you're doing a launch, but this is a piece that people are going to need alongside a marketing coach.
Amen to that. Well, Kylie, thank you for telling us what you've got coming up next and your the ways people could connect with you. I personally want to thank you for being on the podcast today. I believe a lot of people are going to get value out of it. But ladies and gentlemen, Kylie Ota, that's it for today's episode. Kylie, shout out to you. Definitely make sure you follow Kylie and what she's doing, because God is going to use her greatly. Thank you so much, Kylie.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everybody. That's it for today. We'll see you next Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the Jericho Force podcast. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Jericho Force podcast. You can catch us live on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time and on demand. Check out jerichoforce.com/podcast for more details. To learn how to live out your faith in the marketplace, grab a copy of Jason Davis's book, Fortified, Being Rooted in God's Plan for Work and Business, available on Amazon.